Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable our lecturer Ms. Mutmainah MPD, the subject Educational Research, and my beloved friends, we are from Group 4 and now we are going to present about Causal Comparative Research. But first, let me introduce our member first. My name is Masaya Safira Olivanisa and the others are Linda Mariani and Lisa Febiana. Okay, the first presentation will be explained by me. Causal Comparative Research. So look at the picture. The picture it is illustrate about the athletes of rugby that play in the field. For the question, it is show a group of difference between natural grass or artificial grass that the athlete have been playing in the field. As the example of illustration above, the definition of causal comparative research are: the first is investigator attempt to determine the cause of differences that already exist between or among group of individuals. And the second, this is viewed as a form of association research, since both describe a condition that already exists, like ex post facto. So ex post facto here indicate after research which conduct after variation in a variable of interest has already been determined in the natural course of events. And the third, the group difference variable, either a variable that cannot be manipulated or one they might have manipulated but for one reason or another has not been. And the fourth is studies in medicine and sociology are causal comparative in nature, as are the studies of differences between men and women. Okay, the next is similarities and differences between causal comparative and correlational research. Causal comparative is a quantitative research. For the similarities, associative research attempt to explain phenomena of interest, seek to identify variables that are worthy or of later exploration through experimental research, and then neither permits the manipulation of variables, attempt to explore the causation. For differences, causal studies compare two or more groups of subjects, and then causal studies involve at one categorical variable, and then causal studies often compare average or use cross-breed tables instead of scatter plots and correlational coefficient. Similarities and differences between causal comparative and experimental research. For the similarities of causal comparative and experimental research, first is require at least one categorical variable, and the second, both compare group performance to determine relationship, both to compare separate groups of subjects. For the differences, in experimental research, the independent variable is manipulated. The causal studies are likely to provide much weaker evidence for causation. And then in experimental study, the researcher can assign subject to treatment groups. And then the researcher has a greater flexibility in formulating the structure of the design in experimental research. The next is steps involved in causal comparative research. Here is 4-step causal comparative research. The first is problem formulation. The first step is to identify and define the particular phenomena of interest and consider the possible cause. And the second is sample. Selection of the sample of individuals to be studied by carefully identifying the characteristic of select group. And then the third, instrumentation. no limits on the types of instruments that are used in causal comparative study. And the fourth is the basic design involves selecting two or more groups that differ on the particular variable of interest and comparing them on another variables without manipulation. See the example of figure 16.1. In this design is to select a group that has the independent variable and does not have the independent variable. So the two of groups are then compared on dependent variable. Okay, next. Threats to internal validity in causal comparative research. For the internal validity, usually there are two weaknesses in the research, such as lack of randomization to manipulate an independent variable. The first trait in internal validity in causal comparative research is subject characteristic. The subject characteristic is the possibility exists that the groups are not equivalent on one or more important variables. One way to control for an extraneous variable is to match subject from the comparison group on that variable. Creating or finding homogeneous subgroups would be another way to control the extraneous variable. The third way to control for an extraneous variables is to use the technique of statistical matching. Okay, the next is other trait like loss of subject, location, instrumentation, history, maturation, data collector bias, instrument decay, attitude, regression, and then pretest or treatment interaction effect. Okay, I think that's enough for me. The next presentation will be explained by Linda.
Okay, my name is Linda Mariani. Here I will continue the explanation before. Now I will explain about evaluating threat to internal validity in causal comparative study. Okay, the evaluation of specific threat to internal validity in causal comparative study involves a set of steps similar to those present in chapter 13 for experimental studies. Okay, there are three steps to evaluation of specific threat to internal validity in causal comparative. The first step is what specific factor either are known to affect or may logically be expected to affect the variable on which group are being cooperative. And then the researcher need not be concerned with factors unrelated to what is being studied. Okay, the step 2 is what is the likelihood of the cooperative zones group differing on each of those factors. And then the last step is evaluate the threat on the basis of how likely they are to have an effect and plan to control for them. If a given threat cannot be controlled, this should be unknown. Okay, as we did in chapter 13 and 15, we list below a number of the threats to internal validity discussed in chapter 9, followed by our evaluation of each they might apply to the study. Okay, it's a first threat to internal validity. The first one is subject characteristic. Although many possible subject characteristics might be considered, we'll deal with only four here: socioeconomic level of the family, gender, ethnicity, and marketable job skill. And then, the second one is mortality. Mortality is possible that reversing to be interviewed is related to each of the three hypothesis causal variable, and then to make every effort to get cooperative for the interview from all subjects in both groups and having an effect unless controlled. And the third one is location. While it seems unlikely that the causal variable will divert for different schools, this might be the case. It is quite likely the location is related to dropping out. The best solution is to analyze the data separately for each school, and then likelihood of having an effective unless controlled moderate. Okay, and here it's instrumentation. Instrumentation have three steps. The first one is instrument decay. Instrument decay in this study means interview fatigue. This certain could affect the information obtained from students in both groups, and the fatigue factor could be different for the two groups, depend on how interviews are scheduled, and likelihood of having an effect unless controlled. The second one is the collector characteristic. Okay, data collector characteristic can be expected to influence the information obtained on the three hypotheses cause variable. This page such training different interview might elicit different information, and then likelihood of having an effective unless control. The last one is that data collector bias. Okay, this might well be related to information obtained on the three hypotheses causal variable. Bias might differ for the two groups. For example, an interview might behave differently when interview drop out. The last one is likelihood of having an effect unless controlled. Okay. This is it's a typo. In this part is mean that other trait. Okay, this other trait is like implementation, history, maturation, attitudinal, and regression trait to not affect this kind of causal cooperative study. The trick to identifying trait to internal validity in causal cooperative studies. The first is to think various things that might affect the outcome variable of the study, and the second one is to decide based on evidence or experience whether this thing would be like to affect the comparison group differently. Okay, now I will explain about data analysis. The first step in analyzing data is a causal cooperative study is to construct frequency polygon and then calculate the mean and standard deviation of each group if the variable is quantitative. This described statistics are then assesses of magnitude. The first is a statistic inference test may or may not be appropriate depending on whether random samples were used from identified population. After that, the most commonly used test in causal-comparative study is a t-test for difference between means. When more groups are used, the either an analysis of variance or an analysis of covariance of the operated test. Okay, this is the example of the analyze the data. Before analyze of cooperative can be used, however, the data involved need to satisfy certain assumption. The results of a causal cooperative study must be interpreted with caution. As with correlation study, causal cooperative study are good at identifying relationship between variables, but they not prove cause and effect. And then there are two ways to strengthen the interpretability of causal cooperative study. The first one is alternative hypothesis should be formulated and investigate whenever possible. And then in the given variable involved are categorical. The relationship among all of the variables in the study should be examined using the technique of discriminant function analysis. Okay, the last material is association between categorical variable. Associational method has considered only the studies in which one variable is categorical and the others is quantitative, and then both variables are quantitative, and this is the example of the relationship between categorical variable is shown in table 16.1. 16.1 I mean, sorry. Okay, this is a grade level and gender of teacher hypothetical date. Okay, as with true with correlation, such data can be used for purpose of prediction and in the search for cause and effect. That there are knowing that a person is a teacher and male, we can predict with some degree of confidence on the basis of the data in the table 16.1 that the teacher either junior or senior high school, since 76% of male who are teacher do so. We can do so and we can also estimate how much in error our prediction is likely to be. The last one is true. The probability of our prediction being in error is 40 until 170 or 24. In this example, the possibility the gender is a major cause of teaching level seems quite remote. There are other variables such as historical pattern or teacher preparation and hiring that make more sense when one tries to explain the relationship. Okay, I think enough. Next to the last presenter. Thank you.
Okay, I will continue my friend's explanation. It is about an example of causal comparative research. For your information, this example is a published example of causal comparative research that followed by a critique of its strengths and the weaknesses. This study is an example of mixed methods research. For the full version, you can read the PDF. It is about the research report. The title is Internet Use, Abuse, and Dependence
among students at a southeastern regional university. Abstract. The objective is the purpose of the research. And then in the first paragraph, we have justification, prior research, and also justification again. It has in each paragraph, almost in each paragraph. We go on to the paragraph 2, also has justification and prior research. And also we have instrument here using a questionnaire, and the operational definition, it is abuse the internet and also the internet in the internet dependent. We have the part of purpose here. It is a department for the previously cited studies. We gathered that data via paper surveys and over a restricted access internet site. And then in methods, in participant we recruit 485 people. It is 55% female and 45% male, and also large N of sample description. The final sample of the participant is 411 participants. It was 56% female, 91% Caucasian, and then primarily 50%. And also for the range of years, the average participant were aged 20,4 years. It is about 18 until 56. And then we have materials. There are demographics, included the questions pertaining to sex, race, and ethnic, year of birth, years in college, and also the current state or country of permanent residence to describe the sample. We have the table of social style here. Look at table 1, and also the table 2, the preferences for therapy. There are the social style and also the percent of it, and the preference for therapy, and also the percent, the average of it. And then next, for materials, we have internet use. The research has low internet use. It's also 6,62, indicating an acceptable level of internal consistency. It's still a poor reliability, and also for depression, the operational definition has the specific data needed. We have table 3 here. It is about the reported behaviors related to internet abuse and dependence. We have the matching DSM-4 criteria, and we have criterion, and also the percent and the average. Next, we have to sampling. We have randomly via the internet, and also the key, the recruitment of the students. We have table 4, frequency of internet access by reason and services. There are the percent and also the average. We also has the result here from the research. There are paper versus internet survey completion. There are small differences, hotel links T similar to t-test, and also the depression, sociability, and therapy options, the internet use, all of the results in this research. And then beside results, we have comments. Comments here include the prior research. Comments here include all of the things that need to be commented in this research. There are notes and also the acknowledgement. Now we go on to the analysis of the study. The purpose, though stated as the objective, the purpose is clear: to assess internet use, abuse, and dependence. And justification or prior research, the study of justification is embedded in the extensive sections of prior research. Definition, the primary ones, internet abuse and dependence and depressions, are sufficiently clarified by operational definitions. Hypothesis, in a hypothesis, none is stated. The sample, the final sample of 411 is satisfactorily large and described as to sex, age, ethnicity, states of origin, and college class, which is helpful in judging generalizability. And also the instrumentation consists of several sets of questionnaires items using different formats apparently combined into one instrument. Next, we have procedures or result and internal validity. The procedures consist of administering the questionnaire to half the sample on paper, the other half via the internet per instructions. Separations into groups was based on the data collection section they attended. It is not clear whether this was done randomly or how many sessions were involved. The two groups are said not differ on key or unspecified demographic variables or on time spent on the internet. Last, we have data analysis, discussion, and interpretation. The method used in the data analysis are technically appropriate. Our concern is with the all too common reliance on inference techniques. In assessing and interpreting data, we think this resulted in making too much of many very simple relationships. Correlation less than 20 and effect sizes under 50. Okay, I think that's all from our group. Thank you very much for giving your attention. We are so sorry if there were so many mistakes. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.